Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on root cause analysis and systemic corrective action. My name is Shannon Craddock, and I'm the Programs and Accreditations Manager here at PJR. All participants have been muted to ensure sound quality. Questions will be answered at the end of today's presentation. Please type them into the question or chat feature, and I'll do my best to answer as many questions as possible. A copy of the slides and a digital recording of today's webinar will be available for download at our website, www.pjr.com, in about 48 hours from the conclusion of today's presentation. So today we're going to spend a few minutes talking about why we're doing this, why this particular topic, this particular webinar. We'll then take a look at a well-written audit finding and dissect the parts. Talk about actions taken to correct. We'll talk about sound root cause analysis and focus on one particular technique, the why technique. We'll talk about actions taken to prevent recurrence of issues or corrective actions. Actions taken to prevent occurrence of issues in the first place, preventive actions. And then good, robust corrective action verification activities. So why are we doing this? Why this particular topic? Well, we'd like to see your organization improve. PJR is a strong believer that there should be a correlation between a third-party audit results and how you perform in the eyes of your customers. Remember that the purpose of a management systems audit isn't to convince your auditor to write as few findings as possible. It's for your auditor to dig deep, conduct a rigorous audit, document clear findings, and for you to take systemic corrective action on each and every NCR that's found. And that's when we'll start to see the stronger correlation. Audit findings should have three distinct parts. First is the statement of nonconformity. Second is objective evidence. And third is a clear citation of the requirement that hasn't been fulfilled. Audit findings that aren't written this way and do not contain these three parts shouldn't be written by PJR auditors. And in fact, they should not be accepted by you or clients. And I encourage you to reject audit findings that aren't written this way at the closing meeting. Sometimes audits reveal opportunities for improvement, which would exist as statements or recommendation. As they are not nonconformities, there won't be a citation of a requirement that's not being met. Otherwise, it would be a nonconformity. As a practice, our auditors have been instructed to no longer write opportunities for improvement. It is a true art form to do this well. Many auditors were writing nonconformity opportunities for improvement, that sounded like nonconformities or were too consultative in nature. However, I think they can be a strength to an internal audit program, and I encourage that your internal auditors document them when appropriate. So let's talk a little bit about what the statement of nonconformity is. Often the nonconformity that's recorded is not the true problem, but a symptom of the problem. So what we need to do is express the problem in terms of an issue with the system. And in fact, if we can use that word system in the nonconformity statement itself, so much the better. If we're expressing the problem in terms of a person or a particular incident, we're at the symptom stage and we need to elevate it and take it up a level. And I see both internal and third-party auditors making this mistake. So it's important to get to the true problem, the systemic issue, the process level breakdown, in order for problem-solving efforts to be effective. If you fix symptoms, this won't stop the issue from recurring. I can tell you right now, I'm working from home with an illness. Typically, I deliver these webinars from the PGR office. And yesterday, I was at the doctor, and they gave me an antibiotic to address my illness. If I were to just take Tylenol, I would not kill the bacteria causing my infection. So all I would be doing is treating the symptoms of my problem, my sore throat, watery eyes. So it's important to get to the systemic issue and write the problem statement at a systemic or process level. Otherwise, you're just going to fix the symptoms. Just like taking Tylenol isn't going to alleviate a bacterial infection. Furthermore, a well-written nonconformity should stand the test of time. Your organization should be able to look back at nonconformities written years ago and understand exactly what the issue was. So in order to illustrate what I've just discussed, let's take a look at some poorly written nonconformities. Poorly written statements of nonconformity, to be specific. There was no training matrix for the first shift operator running job 9954, indicating competence to run that job. This is at the symptom level. It's not at the process or system breakdown level. We're confusing objective evidence with the statement of nonconformity. It's written at the level of a specific person, the first shift operator. A better way to write this. The system for recording employee training and competence is not completely effective. No training matrix for the first shift operator running job 9954, indicating competence to run that job. And then there's a clear citation of the requirement 9001, 2015, 72D. So the system for recording employee training and competence is not completely effective is a much better statement of nonconformity. We're no longer writing this at a level of a person. We're not citing that first shift operator running job 9954. And in fact, the word system is right in the statement of nonconformity. We're focusing on the systemic breakdown and not a particular incident or person. All right, one more example, a poorly written statement of nonconformity. The quality auditor in the blue cell was using an uncontrolled form to record the results of first piece inspection. Again, at the symptom level, we're talking about a specific auditor, a specific incident. We're confusing objective evidence with the statement of nonconformity. A better way to write this, the document control system is not completely effective. Supported by the evidence, quality auditor in the blue cell was using an uncontrolled form to record the results of first piece inspection. And then there's a citation of the requirement, 9001, 2015, 7531A. And you'll note we're taking this as far out as possible. We're not just saying 75 or 7531. We're taking it out to the furthest subclause so the problem solver knows exactly what shall in the standard was not met. So a better way to write that finding, the document control system is not completely effective. We're focusing on a systemic issue and not a particular incident. So as we wrap up this subsection, a couple points to remember. When you review a statement of nonconformity written by an internal auditor, your customer, or a PGR auditor, ask, have they distinguished between the symptoms of the problem and the real problem itself? Does the final statement of nonconformity focus on a systemic issue? And are there sufficient data to assist in understanding? Meaning, enough objective evidence to support the finding and a very clear citation of the requirement that's not being met. PGR has an internal document issued to our auditors. It's our advisory number 3 that requires all auditors to document any non-fulfillment of a requirement as such. 1 uncalibrated gauge, 1 uncontrolled form, 1 management review input missing from the minutes is a finding, and auditors should be writing those up. We tell our auditors it's absolutely inexcusable not to do so. And really, you may think you're getting 1 less finding, but it's no benefit for you. And it contributes to the diminishment of the integrity of accredited management system certification. So it's our expectation that all nonconformities written by PGR auditors need to be written as I just described. A statement of finding focusing on the systemic breakdown and not a specific incident or person. And then a description of the symptoms found in the objective evidence section, and a clear citation of the requirement not being met. Okay, let's move on to the problem solvers part in all of this, and start with corrections or containment actions. This is a typically straightforward concept, and these are actions taken with respect to the symptom or incident. Therefore, they're incident-specific actions. They're very important and should be taken as soon as possible to stop the symptoms, stop the bleeding, put a Band-Aid on it. They typically take 2 forms. They can be of the type of, we calibrated the gauge that was not calibrated, or we controlled the form that was found to be uncontrolled, or adding a layer of inspection to catch any further occurrence. But you'll remember that inspection adds cost to the system and not value. Later, we'll learn that once the appropriate corrective action is discovered and implemented, costly added inspections can and should be removed from your system. Containment actions or corrections should be very specific to the symptoms cited in the objective evidence. So the training matrix for the first shift operator running job 9954 was updated to reflect his competency to run that job unsupervised, or all copies of the uncontrolled form the quality auditor in the blue cell was using were destroyed. Corrections may also need to include an extent analysis. So let's take a look at our 2 examples. Now we saw that there was a first shift operator running a particular job whose training matrix wasn't updated. In an extent analysis, you're going to do a look across. Are there other training matrices that need to be updated? And we would expect for you to verify for every single employee in your organization, every single temporary employee or contractor, independent contractor working on behalf of your organization, that their training matrices are up to date. Look across and make sure that in your extent analysis, you're hitting everybody. And if there were uncontrolled forms in the blue cell, do a look across to all other cells and all other areas in your facility. Extent analysis. If the auditor found 1 instance, are there more? And you really, in an extent analysis, are attempting to understand the depth and breadth of the problem. Okay, let's talk a bit about root cause analysis. And one of the most common failures I see is that many organizations will provide a root cause that simply restates the incident for the root cause analysis. This is not acceptable. Some examples include, our organization failed to update the training matrix for the operator running job 9954. Absolutely, we already know that, and we know that, we told you that. Why is that the case? Or the quality auditor in the blue cell didn't use the correct form to record the results of the first article inspection. Ah, you don't say. Again, we told you this. You need to dig deeper. Another common issue is that some corrective action reports will give containment actions for the root cause analysis. This is also not acceptable. Okay, so if you've started looking at your email or are checking social media, now is the most important slide in today's presentation. Good root cause analysis will answer the following question. What in the system failed such that the problem occurred? There's that word again, system. The focus is on the system and not the incident. So again, sound root cause analysis will answer the question. What in the system failed such that the problem occurred? It's possible that some problems may have multiple root causes. And if the true root cause cannot be discovered, all require corrective action. How do you know if you've discovered the true root cause? Well, then you're able to turn the problem on and off like a light switch. If the problem cannot be turned on and off at will, then the root cause has probably not been found. This is also called recreating the defect. And if the defect is recreated and you're not seeing that the problem has turned on again, you likely don't have the root cause. So let me illustrate this with an example from my past. I used to work in the automotive industry for a particular large plastic injection molder. And we were having a very difficult time and had received several corrective action requests, to keep it generic, from General Motors because we were mixing left-hand parts and right-hand parts from a dual cavity tool. So the left-hand parts were packed in right-hand boxes and vice versa. So this dual cavity tool was a very simple shoot and ship part, but operators for some reason couldn't pack the parts appropriately. And we looked at the cell, the manufacturing cell arrangement and configuration, and it turned out that when the operator picked the parts dropped by the robot onto the conveyor, that the left-hand pack-out box was directly in front of the operator's body and the right-hand box was directly behind it. So it wasn't a very logical cell arrangement. You would think that the left-hand pack-out box would be on the left-hand side of the operator's body and the right-hand pack-out box would be to the right side of the operator's body. But the narrow manufacturing cell configuration prevented that. So what we did is convened a problem-solving team and moved 3 presses, the press on either side of the press in question, and then we adjusted the positioning of the press in question. Press moves are very costly. In this case, it required re-PPAP. And we were able to orient the cell so that the left-hand pack-out box was on the left-hand side of the operator's body, and the right-hand pack-out box was on the right side of the operator's body. And for a while, we had better results, but then complaints started coming in from General Motors. So we knew that we hadn't turned the problem off like a light switch, and the true root cause had not been found. More on this in a few moments. There are a lot of different techniques for root cause analysis. The is not a fishbone or a Ishikawa diagram or the 5 why or the why technique. Because sometimes it takes only 3 whys to get there and sometimes it may take more than 5 whys. Today we're going to focus on the why technique, and it's the process of asking why over and over again until we get to the root cause. So let's look at our finding. The first one, the system for recording employee training and competence is not completely effective. supported by objective evidence. No training matrix for the first shift operator running job 9954 indicating competence to run that job. So why is it that the training matrix didn't reflect the auditor's competence? So let's begin by asking why. Well, the first shift operator failed to update the training matrix as required by the first of the month. Well, why did the first shift operator fail to do so? Well, before the end of the previous month, the HR manager would email the training matrix template to all the department supervisors, but it didn't happen this particular time. Why? The HR manager left the company before the end of the month, and her replacement didn't know to do this and didn't do it. Why? The procedure for training didn't include a requirement to prompt the new HR manager to email the template to all the supervisors. So here we get into a little bit of a gray area. How do we know if we've gone far enough? And I always joke and say, I'm, the mother of two young boys, and oftentimes they'll say, why, when I say no, and they'll ask again, and I'll say no, and they say, why? And I finally get to the point where I say, because I'm the mom, and I said so. So when you feel you're at that point, you can have some confidence that you've gone far enough. Sure, this doesn't give you a lot of guidance, but remember, your problem-solving team should be a multidisciplinary team with more than one person. And if you get everybody in that group agreeing that you think you've gone far enough, you can probably have some confidence that you might be there. Let's take a look at our second example. The document control system is not completely effective. The quality auditor in the blue cell was using an uncontrolled form to record the results of first piece inspection. Well, why? Why use an uncontrolled form? Well, controlled copies of the form had all been used in the blue cell, so the quality auditor resorted to an uncontrolled form. Why? The quality auditor was not aware that when no hard copies of the form were available, that all the latest versions of all forms could be accessed through the company's database. Well, why did they know that they were easily accessible? The blue cell quality auditor was not given a username and password to access the company database. Well, why not? HR didn't have a policy to ensure all new hires are granted a username and password. Have we gone far enough? If the members of your disciplinary team are all kind of agreeing, yep, I think for our first time through, we feel this is it, I would take it at that point and look at implementing a corrective action to address that why. Keep in mind that PGR will not accept the following for root cause. Oversight, we misunderstood the requirement. I forgot a couple of my favorites, another ISO 9001 blunder, our consultant messed up, or human error. Now, the only one I might have a little bit of flexibility on is a misunderstanding of the requirement. But we'll typically only accept this on an initial audit or a transition audit where the audit criteria are new. This will not be accepted on surveillance audit 37. Corrective action should address the root cause and should answer the question, what in the system failed such that the problem occurred? Now, with corrective actions, we see that many organizations repeat their containment actions or corrections instead of giving corrective actions that address the root cause, and this is not acceptable. And in fact, this is the most common blunder with a corrective action. Organizations not understanding the distinction between a correction and a corrective action. Remember, corrective actions are incident-specific actions. They address the symptoms of the problem, whereas corrective actions address the root cause. Not only should corrective actions address the system, but they should be irreversible, and they should involve a change in the system. Training by itself is generally not a system change. And I've already stated that incident-specific actions and corrections or containment actions are not irreversible. So if you indicate for your corrective action that you retrained somebody, okay, that's okay, but chances are you've already trained that person. How is it now that only retraining is going to prevent recurrence of the problem? There should be a system change to go along with that retraining. And keep in mind that, at least in the automotive industry, corrective action should prompt changes to the FEMAs and control plan and may require a new PPAP. There should be at least one corrective action for each root cause found, and subsequent data should show that the problem has 100% disappeared. So in the example I was talking about at that large Tier 1 plastic injection molding facility that I worked at, once we reconfigured the manufacturing cell layout, we saw some relief, fewer complaints from General Motors about mixed parts, but there were still left-hand parts in right-hand boxes and right-hand parts in left-hand boxes. Therefore, subsequent data were not showing that the problem had 100% disappeared. So we knew at that point we had not discovered the true root cause. And our corrective action was therefore flawed. So we reconvened our problem-solving team and we began discussing other possible root causes. And it was a third shift material handler who was invited into the meeting who said, you know, if it was impossible to pack a left-hand part into a right-hand box and a right-hand part into a left-hand box, our problem would go away. Bingo, we had it. So we worked with a packaging engineer on staff to reconfigure the packaging layout and the dividers within the gaylord where the material was packed. And we made it impossible to pack a left-hand part into a right-hand box and vice versa. And what do you know? Subsequent data showed that the problem had 100% disappeared. So we knew we discovered the true root cause, and our corrective action of reconfiguring the pack-out boxes was effective. So let's go back and revisit the two nonconformities we've been following through today's webinar. The system for recording employee training and competence is not completely effective. The corrective action is Section 4.6 of the procedure for training was updated to include a requirement for the HR manager to email the training matrix template to all supervisors for updating before the end of a month. The new HR manager was trained and she added an automatic reminder to her Outlook to perform this task. So note that there is a training component to this corrective action, but there's also a system change. A procedure has been changed. And this corrective action does address our root cause. The second example, the document control system is not completely effective. The corrective action, the new hire work instruction was revised to include a requirement to grant new hires a username and password for the company database. And HR personnel were trained on this change. Again, there's a training component to the corrective action, which is excellent. But there's also a permanent system change in the revision of the work instruction. Another great idea is that when training is part of the corrective action response, you should include the technique you're going to use to verify training effectiveness. So if you're training people on the proper way to complete a form, let's say, for example, your operators were having difficulty recording the lot number consistently or picking the right number on raw material to record as the lot number, how are you going to verify training effectiveness? Are you going to go back and sample forms that were completed to ensure that the correct lot number is being recorded? That would be your technique for verifying training effectiveness. So let's touch on preventive actions. Preventive actions answer one of two questions. What other systems exist that might have the same root cause present? Or what systems could I have had in place that would have prevented this from happening? Sometimes corrective action reports will put corrective actions for preventive actions. This is not appropriate. Preventive actions address the future, not the past. What could still happen, not what did happen. Preventive actions should address the system, not the incident. There shouldn't be any incidents, otherwise we'd be dealing with corrective actions. And they involve changing the system to prevent future problems. Keep in mind that preventive actions are not identified only because of nonconformities. Many management system standards require a proactive process with inputs from multiple sources: safety walkthroughs, near-miss reports, 5S programs, employee suggestions, etc. That should be routed through a system to determine if there's any opportunities for preventive action or to minimize risk. In other words, no nonconformity should never mean no preventive actions. Finally, let's wrap up with verification, a critical and often not performed step in the problem-solving process. And this is because many corrective action reports, the template forms themselves, do not have places for verification at the appropriate locations. So what should we be looking at in a robust verification exercise? You want to make sure that corrections or containment actions have been taken. And they should be in the past tense. Proper root cause analysis has been performed, answering the question, what in the system failed such that the problem occurred? And we can turn the problem on and off like a light switch. You've taken irreversible systemic corrective actions to address the root cause. And if we added any containment actions or corrections that are an added layer of inspection, we should be able to remove these. And if appropriate, any opportunities for preventive action have been taken. Understand that corrective actions, even though they're meant to be irreversible, could be reversible. When you're making system changes, it means you're changing how work is performed, and change is difficult. Sometimes systems and people tend to return to where they feel comfortable. So you're going to want to continue to verify actions even after you get positive results on the first verification. So in that example that I gave where you might sample some lot traceability forms for the material handlers recording lot information, sure, a week after the training, you're probably going to get very positive results. But what are you going to get 3 months later, 6 months later, 18 months later? Continue to verify actions even if you get positive results on the first verification. I'd like to acknowledge that partial slide content has been provided by the IAOB. And that's it for the prepared portion of today's presentation. I'll now open the floor to any questions that you may have. Again, all participants have been muted to ensure sound quality, so please type your question into the question or chat feature. I'll answer as many of these as possible. Okay, I mentioned at the beginning, Michael and Ralph, that slides can be downloaded from our website, www.pjr.com, as well as a recording of today's webinar in about 24 to 48 hours at the conclusion of today's webinar. So please be sure to check out the webinar section of our website shortly. Yes, Mark. Preventive action is very similar to risk assessment. Daly is asking for templates for corrective action. It would be consulting for PGR to provide those daily. What I'd encourage you to do is go through the slides in today's presentation and make sure you have a prompt for every section we talked about. A statement of nonconformity, objective evidence, the requirement not being met, a correction, an extent analysis, root cause, corrective action, and verification. Someone's asking, do we have to show preventive action discussions as well as risk assessment in our management review minutes? I know that preventive action has been removed from many 9001 2015 based systems. So you'll want to follow the management review requirements in the appropriate standard. Mark. Catherine's asking for IATF 16949, is the ASQ 8D format still the preferred? I noticed PGR does not use this format. PGR does not use the format. Our format meets the requirements that we have to meet, Catherine, under 17021. The best format to use is that which works for your organization and meets any customer-specific requirements. Fred, human error should never be the root cause. There's always a system issue that allows human mistakes to be made. And you need to figure out what that system issue is. Ron has a great question. Do you always cite the ISO clause, or can you cite a company procedure, or both? Absolutely. If an organization has additional requirements in their own procedures, you could cite that as well. Someone's asking, when should a document be controlled? And as a general rule, if there's a need to have and create a document, it should probably be controlled. Ralph is asking, what have you found to be the best method for root cause determination? Whenever I'm doing problem solving to address the findings of accreditation body officer witness audits, we almost exclusively use the why analysis method, Ralph, but other methods can be just as effective. Damon's asking, 5 whys have a tendency to go haywire without a good initial problem statement. Do you suggest spending a lot of time structuring that initial statement? Yeah, Damon, you clearly have been listening. Without a good statement of nonconformity, problem-solving efforts will be ineffective, and that's the most important input, that good statement of nonconformity, focusing on the systemic issue. Ronald's asking, how long should a corrective action be open once the issue has been resolved, meaning the verification? Again, I suggested to keep the nonconformity open until you get positive verification results more than one time. And if you're looking for a specific time period, I once heard 18 months. And I've been having some difficulty finding the source to cite that, but I remember hearing that. So again, it's going to depend on the issue, but if you get positive results 2 days later and a week later, it's really going to depend on the issue. You very likely need to keep it open longer. Someone's asking, what's the objective of an extent analysis? So when an auditor is conducting an audit, if they discover a nonconformity, an uncontrolled gauge, for example, that an operator is using, they're going to cite that. But the possibility exists that there might be other uncontrolled gauges. It's not the auditor's job to look at every gauge and assess whether or not it's part of your gauge control system. That is what you should be doing in your extent analysis or look across. Ensure you have your arms around the problem and truly understand the depth and breadth of the issue. Someone's asking how long a corrective action can stay open. I don't necessarily think there's a limit. Don't close something for the sake of making your corrective action log go green. You want to make sure that your verification efforts yield positive results, showing the problem has 100% disappeared. And if not, continue verifying or consider that perhaps you haven't identified the correct root cause. What if the corrective action worked but did not eliminate the problem 100%? Well, then you may have discovered one of many root causes, or it may not be the true root cause. So I would go back to my problem solving and root cause analysis, Ronald. Can you submit corrective action without completing verification stage? And I'm taking your question to be, can you submit corrective action to your registrar certification body, PJR, without completing the verification stage? Sure. The situation may not have presented itself again for you to do a true verification. No, Said, it's not mandatory to have preventive actions in an NCR form. You can handle preventive actions if they're a requirement or something that you're doing to address the risk portion of the standard. If we're talking 9001, they don't necessarily have to be on your NCR form. Someone's saying that they were once told by a PGR auditor that all corrective actions should be closed within 30 days. This is an inadequate time period for verification for most of our corrective actions. So we don't do it. And that's going to depend on the standard. In general, I can't think of a standard that requires corrective actions to be closed. Some standards do require that corrective actions be submitted within 30 days and that the correction be fully implemented. So it's going to depend on the standard, as some standards have very specific requirements about the 30-day mark, but never closure. Okay, thanks for clarifying that was not a PGR auditor who made that 30-day statement. Thank you, Ann. Someone is asking, what do you mean the corrective action should be able to turn on and off? Do you mean if we had excess oil on a part, the correction would be to reduce the amount of oil, then if you added more, the problem would recur? So let's just take a look at that, Ronald. Let's say that the root cause was too much oil. Yeah, so if you were to figure out what was causing too much oil and fix that, maybe it's part of the machinery or equipment itself, it was leaking oil. If you fix that on the machine as your corrective action and the problem disappeared, great. You know you have the true root cause. If you were to create that defect in the machine again or simply manually add more oil to the parts and you were having the same problem, yes, that's turning the problem on and off like a light switch or recreating the defect to confirm you have the right root cause. Teresa's asking, we have operators that forget to write down weights of parts as they're coming out of the machine. How do we change the system since we call this human error? Teresa, there's an expensive, easy answer, and that's perhaps some error-proofing equipment or automation to your process that will reduce the reliance on operators to do this. But you'd have to get a team together if that's not a possibility, that kind of automation or error proofing, to figure out what the specific root cause and corrective actions are. Yeah, and I keep getting a lot from Laura and Michael or Michael on human error. Saying if the root cause is human error, and the point I'm trying to make is that the root cause should not be human error. There's something in your system that's allowing humans to make mistakes, and that's what you want to focus on addressing. Those are all the questions that have come in to this point. I'll wait a few more minutes to see if any additional questions come in. Okay, getting a lot of people disagreeing about human error. So what I'm trying to communicate is that if your root cause is human error, you want to make sure that that's not an easy out or kind of a scapegoat response. You want to make sure that your problem solving is in fact effective. There is almost always a system change that can be made that makes it impossible for operators to make mistakes. Now, that being said, it may be that the fix is not cost effective for your organization, because often that fix might be error proofing or adding automation to a process to eliminate the reliance on human beings. And I need to be cognizant and recognize that, as does PJR, and I think we do a good job as a certification body doing it. So if you can, that may then mean adding a layer of inspection as part of your corrective action to prevent recurrence of the issue. And I hope that addresses some of the claims I'm getting that, you know, organizations may not have engineering departments or manufacturing engineers to assist with those re-engineering the workplace initiatives or introduction of automation or air-proofing equipment. So I hope that helps, Steve. Someone's asking if root cause is quality engineer's responsibility or manufacturing engineer and quality engineer. It's a lot more than quality and manufacturing engineers. It could be the operators, it could be the production supervisor, it could be material handlers. You need to figure out what the issue is and invite everyone that's involved. Great question on if the root cause was found to be ineffective, would it be better to use other techniques the second time around to help determine the root cause? It may be. That may be an option, Michael. Okay, we appear to be out of questions. I appreciate everyone's time and attention today, and I hope that you found today's webinar helpful. Again, visit our website, www.pjr.com. Copies of the slides that I used today, as well as a recording of today's webinar, will be available for download 24 to 48 hours from the conclusion of today's webinar. Additionally, the same section on our website contains great updates on new upcoming webinars being held by PJR, and all of these are free. Thanks very much, folks, and I hope you have a great day.